is there an alligator in here?
He's a monkey.
These legends are like cockroaches. But don't worry. I'm the exterminator.
But certainly you are the true vision for you believe yourself to be. That was once the case.
You are only a shadow beneath my throne. You are the past.
I can do this all day.
Yeah, I know.
Superior Spider-Man is actually Otto Octavius, who prior to the Superior Spider-Man storyline had brain swapped with Peter, yet a piece of Peter still remained in his own body and didn't die in Otto's body, which ended up convincing Otto to be a hero, albeit a darker one. This small bit of Peter that was left in his body was also trying to regain control, for obvious reasons because, you know, a superhero was piloting his bone mech. This small bit of Peter though was at times able to interfere or even control Otto temporarily. One of these moments came in Superior Spider-Man number 8, where there was a device that was capable of wiping Peter from Otto's brain, but to get the actual item, Otto had to perform surgery on a little girl. However, Peter didn't think that Otto was actually able to do it, so he tries to stop Otto from even performing the surgery, but he also didn't want him to get the thing that would wipe him from his brain. Also, Otto did this surgery while having his Spider-Man mask on and an additional face mask. But either way, this version of Spider-Man was definitely more ruthless and willing to kill, since he was still technically a supervillain. And in 9, Kane. The clone that would come to be known as Kane was the Jackal's first attempt at cloning Peter Parker. Initially thought to be a success, Kane eventually became deformed due to a flaw in the cloning process, and he continued to degenerate, and he was left further deformed and mentally unstable. Aren't we all? The Jackal allowed Kane to live as like a test subject to see how long he would be able to survive, and it ended up exceeding Jackal's expectations. As a result though, Kane experienced a strong feeling of rejection that might be kind of like a father-son kind of thing, you know what I mean. Kane left and realized that the degeneration that had caused his mental state to decline had also amplified his powers that he had genetically kind of inherited from Peter. His strength, speed, stamina, and agility were also comparable to those of Peter, but he also gained precognitive powers as well, which showed him flashes of the future, which seemed to be sort of an amplified spider sense. He also possessed a mark of Cain, which was a corrosive touch that he used to leave eaten away handprints on victims' faces, which is pretty damn scary if you ask me. Also, if you're enjoying this video and want to see more, be sure you hit that like button and subscribe because it really helps us out against the algorithm almighty. Also, I'm dressed as Spider-Man and talking about Spider-Man, so I feel like that's worth a like. And at 8, Pestilence Spider-Man. When Apocalypse started his plans for world domination, he captured 4 people who he saw as being good enough to be his horsemen and corrupted them. Spider-Man became the horseman known as Pestilence. Pestilence was one of the horsemen that Deadpool, Cannonball, and Siren encountered in their alternate reality search for Cable. And even though Pestilence was accompanied in the fight by Famine and Archangel, all 3 of them were defeated. This version of Peter Parker has the same powers as his 616 counterpart, except this time they've been augmented by Apocalypse when he corrupted them. But I mean, like a Spider-Man who is literally a horseman of the apocalypse and asks people if they will scream while he sucks the marrow from their bones, I think it's safe to say that this guy's pretty damn scary. And he made his first appearance in 2005, which makes this character around the same age that Peter was when he got his powers, which is kind of ironic. He hails from Earth 5701, which is the age of Apocalypse Earth. And it's 7, Ghost Spider. Ghost Spider comes from Earth 11638, and in this reality, Peter Parker's Uncle Ben never died, and actually ended up helping Peter to train as a hero with his new spider powers, becoming the Amazing Spider, a famous and popular superhero who also became a rich and successful scientist, having his own company called Parker Technologies. With his resources and motivation from Uncle Ben, the Amazing Spider used transportation technology to bring Spider-Men from other universes to his and absorb their powers to increase his. After bringing the Spider-Man from Earth 616 to his Earth though, and making him believe that he arrived in this universe by accident, the Amazing Spider was weakened by the feedback of the dimensional portal. Eventually, the Amazing Spider was convinced that what he was doing was not in fact heroic and allowed himself to die. But after dying, the Sorcerer Supreme of Dr. Banner, infused Peter's spirit that was trapped in hell with the powers of the damned, causing him to become a form of Ghost Rider, calling himself the Ghost Spider. And honestly, this is one of the baddest spider suits of all time. I love it. If I could figure out a way to cosplay this, I would. And at 6, Zombie Spider-Man. Okay, so technically this is Spider-Man, but it's a zombie version of Spider-Man, but I'm gonna count it anyway, because this is pretty damn messed up, zombie or not. On Earth 2149, an alien plague ends up infecting all superpowered individuals and turns them into zombies. However, it's later revealed that the Necronomicon from the Evil Dead was actually what caused this plague. But after learning that the plague was really bad, since I guess the fact that they were calling it a plague wasn't enough, or the fact that the world had to shut down, so the population wasn't wiped out, Peter ran home to get Aunt May and Mary Jane the hell out of Dodge. But when he got there, we got a good old case of Parker Luck, protagonist syndrome. Boom, zombie spider. He ends up becoming a zombie as soon as he gets home and eats the 2 most important women in his life. He also fractured his jaw before becoming a zombie so he could open his mouth more, I guess. Or kind of like man spider it. Yeah, it's not a pretty sight. Like, even by zombie standards, it's whew. Halfway through and at number 5, Man Spider. Man Spider is the mutated form of Spider-Man which appeared in both the comics and the 1990s animated series, with his original appearance actually coming from the animated series. In the 90s cartoon, Spider-Man's transformation into the Man Spider was not caused deliberately like it was in the comics, but as a result of his body mutating further from the original spider bite that gave him his powers. After his attempts to ask Professor X and the X-Men for help developing a cure meet with failure, Spider-Man turned to his friend Dr. Mariah Crawford for aid. Unfortunately, his initial attempt to cure himself resulted in him accelerating the actual mutation process and growing 4 new arms. The accelerated mutation subsequently caused him to mutate into the Man Spider after fighting the Punisher and a recently mutated Michael Morbius. The mutated Spider-Man retained some of his memories and his emotional responses to seeing loved ones or people who reminded him of his loved ones but could not communicate with them. Eventually, during the final episode of the storyline called Neurogenic Nightmare, Dr. Connors reprogrammed devices that Vulture was using to absorb youth from other people and caused him to give Peter back his spider powers but not the mutation, resulting in the Vulture mutating into Man Spider, although somehow he had gotten rid of this mutation off screen later in the series. It's also worth noting that the introduction of Man Spider in the comics, which was thanks to this animated series, is actually what introduced the biological web shooters from Sam Raimi's Spider-Man into the comics as well. And at 4, Spider Carnage. Spider Carnage is my favorite alternate version of Spider-Man. Also being introduced in the Spider-Man animated series in the 1990s like the Man Spider from last number, this version of Peter Parker shared most of his early life with his superhero counterpart. However, the difference between these two was that Aunt May at some point died as well, being buried next to Uncle Ben. Thanks to some messing around with interdimensional portals by Jonathan Ohm, a version of a Carnage symbiote from another universe sensed this Peter's anger and latched onto him, turning him into the Spider Carnage, a version of Spider-Man with the Carnage symbiote, if you couldn't tell. A villain set on revenge and the destruction of all realities. Spider Carnage is one of the coolest iterations of Spider-Man to date in my opinion, and it's part of the reason I love the 90s cartoon so much. I watch it all the way through just so I can see Spider Carnage at the end. And while there is a version from the comics just called the Spider, which is Spider-Man with the Carnage symbiote, this version wanted to destroy literally everything, so yes please, this is certainly the scarier of the two, just saying. Sorry comic lovers, okay? Look, I like the comics too, but Spider Carnage is definitely worse than the Spider. Getting close to the end at number 3, Patient Zero Spider-Man. After the Punisher accidentally released Survivor 118, a chemical designed to help people adapt to a post-apocalyptic environment, Spider-Man was the first to show symptoms from it after he ate the rhino during a hockey game. The Fantastic Four subdued him shortly afterwards and put him in a cage for experimentation, but Ben Grimm also succumbed to the plague himself and freed Spider-Man from captivity, though the exact reason why he did that is unknown. As he escapes into the city, he briefly fought Wolverine and the Punisher, but soon the world would start to fall apart and heroes and villains alike would become cannibals, eventually leaving the Punisher as the only hero left to fight them. A turf war erupted among the emerging tribes of cannibals, due in part to the King of Death's manipulations in an attempt to thin the herd, but Spider-Man, now referred to as Patient Zero, was the most successful and took control of all of Manhattan for his own tribe, while the others left to stake new lands. They had to conquer other places. Especially given the recent world issues though, I think that this is certainly something that I can say a good majority of people are afraid of. Although I bet that there are some survivors on this earth that say that the Survivor 118 plague is fake. calling it. Penultimately, in at number 2, Wolf Spider. At an unknown time in this universe, Wolf Spider gained spider-like powers, but unlike most other realities Peter Parker, he became a villain, remorselessly killing this universe's Miles Morales and everyone who stood for heroism and responsibility. Because, you know, we're bad guys, it's what we do. First appearing in the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon in Season 4, Episode 16, this guy isn't even the villain of just one world. After finding a shard of the Siege Perilous, he traveled through dimensions to find the rest. One of these dimensions was Blood Spider's homeworld, where he allied himself with the Lizard King. After turning almost everyone into vampires, which is weird because, I mean, it was called the Lizard King. Well, wouldn't you want to turn them into lizards, but whatever. He and the Lizard King hatched a plan to block out the sun so that vampires could just roam free on the earth. And this sounds very Dawnguard Volkihar clan to me. Okay, Peter? Like, you gonna tell me that you need to find Oriel's bow next? And like a daughter of Cold Harbor? I don't know. Skyrim. Wolf Spider, though, was cold and ruthless and obsessed with gathering the shards of Siege Perilous, and seemed to have a grudge against Spider-Man and every Miles Morales. An evil Peter Parker is always a scary thing. And finally, in at number 1, Spider-Man. Peter Parker of Earth 11580 was once a promising young student, invited by Max Modal alongside his best friend Gwen Stacy to tour his Bleeding Edge company at Horizon Labs. One of the experiments the pair observed was a massive colony of spiders that Modell was bombarding with numerous radioactive particles in the name of genetic alteration. Parker, of course, fell into this colony where he seemed to be devoured, but in the process, the spiders became a singular hive mind construct that absorbed Peter's consciousness. So they started masquerading as the man they absorbed. The Hive, calling themselves Spidersman, put on the Spider-Man costume and began to fight crime in Cruel York. First appearing in Spider-Geddon number 3, I absolutely hate the idea of a whole human being made of spiders, because that's just f***ed up. Look, I'm arachnophobic except for the odd time where I need to impress someone, but it's absolutely horrific to think of any being made entirely of spiders, okay? I would actually rather die. Even if this is a good guy. No fucking way am I looking at this man and saying, oh yeah, let's let him help us. No, he can go burn with the rest of the spider species as they fucking should, okay?
Number 10, Reverend Bruce Wayne. Reverend Bruce isn't particularly scary to begin with, but the world he comes from and the fight he fights is definitely scary. This is a version of Batman who isn't just taking up the mantle to fight his parents' killers and rid Gotham of crime, but instead is attempting to fight against a whole political and societal system. In the Elseworlds story Batman Holy Terror, the course of history is changed somewhat so that America is basically still part of the Commonwealth. As such, it turns out that the seemingly random mugging and murder of Bruce's parents was not actually so random, and was actually a government hit that was later made to look like a mugging gone wrong. When Reverend Bruce finds out about this, he dons a demon costume that once belonged to his father Thomas and sets out to investigate. He also goes on to find out about government-run human experiments and an alien whom they captured, raised, and later killed with green rocks when he became too hard to control. Poor would-be Superman. Number 9, Gods and Monsters Batman. This version of Batman is not Bruce Wayne, but is instead Kirk Langstrom. In this reality, there is no Bruce Wayne to take up the mantle, and so Kirk ends up with the name himself. Not because he was inspired by a bat smashing through a window, of course, but because he is kind of actually part vampire bat. Kirk was a brilliant scientist who was working on a cure for lymphoma. He eventually figured out how to create this cure using bat saliva and nanotech to strengthen his experimental treatment. However, while it succeeded in curing his cancer, it also turned Kirk into a pseudo-vampire. While he remains a hero and typically only ingests artificially created plasma or even animals' blood, which can also help him to survive, he has also been known to feed on criminals from time to time. He's like, these criminals, nah, I gotta eat, they kinda deserve it, I'm just gonna eat them. And friends, before we move on to our next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more scary alternate Batman lists, of which, let's be real, there's a lot of scary alternate Batman out there, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Spooky thumbs up, spooky spook. Number 8, DCEU Batman, or Batfleck if you prefer. Ben Affleck's Batman from Batman vs Superman especially is a much darker figure in comparison to the comics, and kind of in comparison to a lot of other Batmen that have been on the big screen. This is a version of the hero who has decided that he is willing to kill when he needs to. All in all, it seems to be implied that the death of Jason Todd is what reshaped Batman's morals here and caused him to readjust his code. Not only does he kill, but he also does something even worse in my opinion, branding some of the worst criminals that he fights against with a literal bat brand. These are the criminals that Batman has deemed to have done something completely unforgivable. And the thing is that people in prison in Gotham also know the significance of the bat brand, meaning that those who end up with one are basically marked for death. The idea here is that the inmates will carry out the death sentence that Batman has marked them with because they know that whatever this person did, it was one of the worst crimes. Otherwise they wouldn't have this brand. So not only is there an extra layer of fear, but this also shows a complete disregard for human life. I mean, at least a disregard for human life when it comes to really terrible criminals. Batman wants these criminals to live in fear, and he doesn't care what happens to them in prison. In fact, he kinda hopes that they end up dead. Number 7. Batman the Silenced. One perfect spine-chilling dark multiverse tale that I have loved, which even comes with its own creepy lullaby, is the Tales from the Dark Multiverse Batman Hush. In this story we get a reimagined narrative where Batman's childhood friend, Thomas Elliot, is the one who ends up messing up Bruce's life. Tommy in his adult years allies himself with many of Gotham's villains and more usually anti-hero types after Bruce Wayne ends up in Arkham Asylum, which also was kind of part of his doing. However, Bruce isn't quite as checked out as he's been pretending to be, and he ends up escaping in order to get revenge and taking up the mantle of Batman the Silenced, an alternate version basically of Hush, and of course an alternate version of Batman. Number 6. Vampire Batman. This alternate version of Batman comes to us from the alternate Earth 43. As his moniker describes, he is a version of Bruce Wayne who transforms into a more literal version of Batman when he becomes a vampire. Batman. Get it? Cause vampire bats. Oddly enough, this is also not the only version of Batman in the multiverse that also happens to be a vampire, as you already know, because we talked about Gods and Monsters Batman as well, who's also a vampire. Despite being a vampire on Earth 43, Bruce still fights on the good side, fighting against his vampiric urges to feed on human blood. At least, initially he fights against them. At one point, Vampire Bats asks Alfred to stake him in order to prevent him from giving in to his bloodlust, after he seemingly killed the Joker by draining him of all of his blood. However, a stake through the heart doesn't actually kill Batman here, but simply leaves him in a coma. Months later, Gotham is in a pretty bad place without Batman's presence, and Alfred is forced to awaken him in hopes that Gotham will once more have a savior. Batman does go about taking out criminals, but in a very vampiric way, creating a bloodbath as his time staked and his bodily decay has resulted in the loss of his sanity. So he's there and he's killing criminals, but he's like killing criminals, and it's like a lot. Number 5. The Merciless. This alternate version of Bruce is one who ends up wielding the power of Ares in the memory of Wonder Woman. Oh yeah, and he's also the one who fought with Diana to the very end against Ares before he inevitably was kind of forced to kill her. Or forced in his eyes, but in our eyes we're like, Bruce, don't do that. Don't do it. This alternate version of Bruce Wayne, aka Batman, hails from the dark multiverse of Earth -42 and is one of the Batman who laughs Dark Knights. To me, he represents Bruce's obsession with power and symbolizes what could very well happen if this was left unchecked. Bruce here loved Diana, but still ended up betraying her because he knew that she would not allow him to keep the power of Ares for himself, and that she would rather destroy such power. So he was like, I gotta hold on to the power because I'm doing great with it, so I guess I gotta kill ya. But also, he wasn't doing that great with it. Spoiler alert. Number 4. The Bruce. This alternate version of Batman comes to us from the reality belonging to Batman I Joker. Here Batman is a tyrant and a symbol who is worshipped as a god. This is not our own Bruce Wayne, by the way, but like a dystopian, almost cyberpunk future version of the character where the people of Gotham see him as their ruler and god. In fact, I don't even know if this guy's name is actually Bruce Wayne or is Bruce at all. I think he's just a person that's elected and like that's the role you play, or that seized power. The people of Gotham worship him and his mission for vengeance. The whole comic is pretty horrifying to read and reveals how even the best of heroic intentions can be perverted over time. Nothing scarier than just humanity and the way that we think things through and can like take a good idea and make it into something a lot more sinister. That's the scariest thing of them all. Well, almost. There's a few more points. Number 3, Murder Machine. Murder Machine is an alternate version of Bruce Wayne who hails from the dark multiverse reality of Earth -44. Here Bruce Wayne turns to his friend and colleague Cyborg for help, building an AI to supplement Alfred after Bruce's longtime friend, butler, and father figure is tragically murdered. However, this AI is programmed to protect Bruce at all costs, which ends up leading the Alfred Protocol, as it's named here, to take over Bruce, replacing his human body with a mechanical, indestructible, and immortal one. Turning Bruce into the Murder Machine, the Alfred Protocol, which Bruce is now fully merged with, also takes away Bruce's ability to feel fear or sadness. I think you know where this is going. It's not going to a good place. In the end, it labels everyone a threat to Bruce and helps him to kill all those who could potentially harm him, including the entire Justice League. Pretty bleak stuff. Number 2, Nemesis. Nemesis is probably one of the most brutal Batman alternates we've ever encountered. Probably also because he doesn't even hail from DC Comics himself, but instead is a creation of Mark Millar's, who hails from Icon Comics. Mark Millar doesn't hail from Icon Comics, but this character does. Mark Millar does many things. Well, we do have an elaborate backstory for Nemesis, which involves him also seeking vengeance for the death of his parents, but in a much more twisted way. Since his parents were actually the worst kind of wealthy folks and murderers themselves, it's never really even confirmed that this backstory is the true backstory of Nemesis. In fact, it's even implied in the story that Nemesis could actually be multiple people who just cause mayhem and death and destruction because, well, maybe they just enjoy it? The whole idea of the character and everything that he does is pretty messed up and is quite dark. Nemesis provides a much more villainous take on the idea of vigilantes and how motivation can mess you up, or alternatively, how you really don't even need motivation to become a messed up and brutal vigilante in the first place. Also power. Lots of things about power, because that's how it goes. Number 1, Batman Who Laughs. Obviously one of the darkest and scariest alternate versions of Batman out there has to be the Batman Who Laughs. This version of Batman is actually like an amalgamation of Joker and Batman, but he is ultimately an alternate of Bruce Wayne, because he is Bruce Wayne, so a little more Bruce really than Joker in the end. He used to fight crime as Batman, but one day Joker took things too far and caused Batman to snap. And not just snap internally, but externally as well, when he actually snapped Joker's neck, killing him. Joker released a special brand of Joker venom with his last breath, which Bruce breathed in. Over time, this venom made him paranoid and homicidal, and ultimately, he became the villain of the story, going so far as to kill all the members of the Bat family. Knowing they would not be able to join him, or not be willing to join him, I guess I should say, well, he killed all of them at least except one. His son Damian Wayne was offered a spot at his father's side, and he ended up taking it. Batman then became the insane Batman Who Laughs and set out to conquer and reshape the entire multiverse. Which definitely means you're pretty scary. If you are like, I'm not just gonna take over this world, I'm gonna like go beyond that, that's a lot.
And a 10 tangent. The Superman of Earth Tangent was originally a human named Harvey Dent, who gained superpowers through a freak accident. He became one of the top superheroes, however, after defeating Ultra Humanite, who on this Earth was created by a US government super soldier project. He became too powerful to be controlled and then threatened to destroy the world. Yeah. But after the death of Superman's wife, he became dark and vengeful, taking over the world. While he protected the world from crime, he was still tyrannical, not allowing any freedom of thought. And this is where the story of Tangent Superman's reign begins. I don't know why Superman is so codependent on Lois, or whoever his wife ends up being, cause like, whenever he loses his wife, he ends up going berserk. Like bro, you literally just like, you lost your whole planet. I think like one death, even if it is the love of your life, isn't gonna be that much. I mean, this version didn't lose his home planet, but like still. Other versions in this list, you get it. And at 9, Subject B-Zero. Subject B-Zero, also known as the Monster, was a creation of Lex Luthor, presumably used to combat Superman, but was taken out of stasis early to help combat Ultraman and the Crime Syndicate. Despite being the creation of Luthor, B-Zero had a gentle heart and simply wished to enjoy the beauty of life and to make his father proud. Although imbued with Kryptonian-like powers, B-Zero was easily overpowered and killed by Ultraman, much to the grief of his father, who actually grew to love him. So while not an evil version of Superman, you have to admit, if this guy was running at you, you'd be pretty damn terrified. Like, bro, get some skin cream, some moisturizer. You look like a rock gnome named Deborah Mustard. Come on. Next thing you know, you're gonna try to control me with one word and then make me a little robot trinket that's gonna get stolen by a goblin who only wants to eat pigeons. And look, you may not understand that reference, but if you do, we're friends now, okay? And it ain't Bizarro. The original Bizarro was created when Superman was exposed to a duplicate ray in accordance with the science fiction concepts of Superman's stories of the there was a lot of sci-fi going on with Superman. However, Bizarro relocated to the Bizarro world, a cuboidal planet called Hatre, which is just Earth backwards, don't really know how to pronounce it, but it operated under Bizarro logic. So like it was a crime to do anything good, and basically since Bizarro was the invert of Superman, that Earth was also populated by inverts of other DC characters. The 1986 Event Crisis on Infinite Earths though rewrote DC's continuity, eliminating that Earth. Since then, two different Bizarro characters have appeared. One of them was a flawed clone created by Lex Luthor, and the second, the longer lasting Bizarro, was an idea of the Batman villain the Joker, brought to life by the cosmic trickster Mr. Mxyzptlk. He was first introduced in Superboy number 68 from 1958 though, and is even one of the coolest Superman versions there is, even if he's not always like actually Superman and rather like an experiment, but like whatever. And it's 7, Justice Lord. For much of his life, Justice Lord's Superman background matched the Justice League counterpart, until President Lex Luthor executed the Flash. Soon after that, Superman stormed the White House, while his comrades battled the Secret Service. And as they were doing that, Superman confronted President Luthor in the Oval Office. Despite Superman's accusations of corruption and abuse of power, Luthor refused to surrender and arrogantly stated that he would find a way to get out of prison, or at least avoid being prosecuted to begin with. Superman declared that if being a hero meant that this feuding and fighting had to continue, then he was done with it, and then used his heat vision to execute the president on the spot, Shazam style. After President Luthor's assassination, the Justice Lords spent the next 2 years imposing their brand of peace on the Earth through harsh rule. Justice Lord Superman himself continued to use his heat vision to lobotomize all of Earth's criminals and supervillains. As a result, all of them became harmless, walking vegetables who obediently inhabited the world's prisons. Which, I mean, like, is a little tamer than some versions of Superman. Like, lobotomy or death. Honestly, I don't know which would be considered more evil. In its 6th kingdom comes Superman. Yet another world where Lois Lane dies. Except this time it's directly at the hands of the Joker, who had flooded the Daily Planet with his toxin, killing everyone but Lois, who had managed to locate a gas mask. When trying to attack the Joker, however, Joker just turns around and cracks her right in the skull. Superman returns as Lois succumbs to her injuries and dies. And as for the Joker, he arrives for his trial, but he's killed by a new superhero going by Magog. However, Magog ends up getting acquitted of his charges after killing the Joker, which honestly, I understand, but Superman is appalled by the public embracing a killer as a hero. Already disheartened at the death of Lois, Kal-El abandons his life as Superman and retreats to his Fortress of Solitude, where he spends the next decade. Superman eventually returns and reforms the Justice League though, with the goal of capturing heroes who took Magog's example and started killing, which results in many a battle and a nuke targeted towards metahuman genes, a la Invasion, the CW crossover. But in the end, Superman does end up dating Wonder Woman and they end up expecting a child. I mean, like, it took you a while, but you got over it. Attaboy. Halfway through into number 5, Red Sun Superman. The Russian hero known as Superman is an alternate version of the hero we know now, from an alternate reality in which baby Kal-El landed not in Smallville, but rather in Soviet Russia, where he was raised by the government. This Superman, while still a hero to Russia, is antithetical to the United States and has defeated some American heroes such as the Green Lantern. His arch nemesis though is still Lex Luthor, who at this point is a scientist employed by the US government to create heroes like Superman. Luthor's copied version of Superman, however, proves a failure and endangers more lives. Bizarro. Luthor created many monsters to battle Superman, but they all didn't really do anything. This version is just scary because, like, it's what every American fears. Communism. And honestly, with some of the other characters on this list and what they did to the human race, like, on this earth, I'm surprised that Russia hasn't used Superman to just destroy everything. Like, whatever. However, this story is a good lesson about who you keep in your life and how people around you affect who you turn out to be. So, there's that at least. And at 4, Reverse Flashpoint Superman. In Tales from the Dark Multiverse 1 Flashpoint, we see a world where Barry died when trying to get his speed back with Thomas Wayne after creating Flashpoint. This leads to Reverse Flash claiming to be the Flash and then trying to get the war with the Atlanteans and Amazons to stop by threatening them. Obviously, this doesn't work out so well, so in an effort to save himself, Reverse Flash races through time, changing the events to create the world exactly how he wants it, with Barry not being able to stop him, which involves saving not only Bruce Wayne, but Martha and Thomas Wayne as well, resulting in a world without a Batman. On the final page of the issue, we see Eobard with all the new heroes he ended up creating and convincing them to join him, as we can tell by the Reverse Flash symbols on their suits. Even Green Lanterns and Wonder Woman has one. This page also has a Superman, and honestly, sick suit, but being controlled, or I guess led by the Reverse Flash, makes this utterly horrifying to think about, especially when you can see the other members of the Flash family racing behind Reverse Flash. He finally got what he wanted. Eobard Thawne became the Flash. Getting close to the end, and in number 3, Ultraman. A member of the crime syndicate, an evil version of the Justice League that terrorized its Earth, that being Earth 3, Ultraman is basically the opposite to Superman. His real name, well, his real human name, is Clark Luthor, and is the adopted son of Lionel Luthor from Earth 2. Ultraman is Kal-El, with 2 L's, who comes from a version of Krypton whose people are mean-spirited and selfish. Unlike other incarnations, they gain power when exposed to green kryptonite. Just before his Krypton was destroyed, Kal-El's parents, Jor-El and Lara, sent him to Earth 3 to one day seek vengeance against the being that destroyed Krypton, teaching him to become the strongest being on the planet or to become nothing at all. Upon his arrival on Earth 3, the young Kal-El coerced a couple of young alcoholic substance addicts, Johnny and Martha Kent, to adopt him, only to murder them years later once he no longer needed them. He went on to found the crime syndicate and take over the world. This guy is a homicidal, violent megalomaniac with mommy and daddy issues. However, he's definitely a character I want to see on the big screen. Please. Penultimately, and at number 2, Overman. Overman is an alternate version of Superman from a different world in the multiverse, obviously, but unlike other versions of Superman, his primary language is German. This is because on this Earth, the German soldiers won World War II, to speak around the YouTube censors, eventually taking over the planet and spreading German everywhere, as in like the language. Another Overman first appeared in Grant Morrison's Animal Man number 23. He is one among several pre-crisis characters that were returned to reality by the Psycho Pirate's Medusa mask. This Overman comes from an Earth based around the grim and gritty stories of the 1980s, and the heroes of this universe were actually a part of an experiment created by the government. Overman... This has got to be one of the most ridiculous points that I saw, but Overman went mad and destructive after contracting an STD. Not even kidding. And the other inhabitants of this Earth were a black and muscular Wonder Woman, an unnamed Flash, and a punk-style Green Lantern. Psycho Pirate pointed out how ridiculous this universe is, but I mean, come on, it's still pretty terrifying. And Overgirl was ruthless on Crisis on Earth X, okay? Finally, and at number 1, Injustice. Injustice is probably one of the most popular alternate Earth stories of this generation. Thanks to the Mortal Kombat-inspired fighting game by the same name, this is an Earth where Joker managed to trick Superman into thinking that he was fighting Doomsday when he was actually killing his wife Lois Lane. That was already bad enough since we know how Superman gets in other worlds when his wife dies. However, this time she was also carrying his unborn child, which he only found out after accidentally killing her. This sent Superman into a fit of rage and caused him to kill the Joker while Batman was intimidating him, much to Batman's dismay. This one action caused Superman to go absolutely berserk and to do the one thing that Batman and everyone else feared: use his power and become the governor of the world. Through this regime, Superman killed anyone who committed a crime, resulting in Batman leading a resistance of other superheroes, not all of whom made it. While the story in the video games remains largely the same of that of the comics it generated, there are a few differences, like the amount of deaths in the comics, since none of them are really playable characters, so losing them won't really affect your gameplay experience. Either way, the scariest version of Superman we've seen today, although almost tied with the one who was using guns. And at 10, Reverse Flash. Now I know what you're thinking, but isn't Eobard known as the villain Reverse Flash? But he's a villain, he's not Barry. Okay, look, alright, I get it. In the main continuity, yes, but in the Dark Multiverse Flashpoint story, Eobard actually becomes the Flash, and he kind of became his own form of hero in a way, like a dark, twisted, messed up hero hellbent on eradicating the human race and just subjugating all superheroes to his will, but hey, that's still kind of a hero, right? Technically it counts. And I mean, like, he's still scary and another version of the Flash, so yes, it does. This is a universe where Barry Allen dies while trying to get his powers back with Flashpoint Batman, aka Thomas Wayne. But he dies, and the Reverse Flash kind of takes his place. But once he tries to stop the war between Aquaman and Wonder Woman by threatening them and killing Arthur, you know that there's going to be some hell to pay. So he sets out on shaping the world into his own image. This involves preventing Batman from ever becoming Batman and instead creating his own superhero team full of versions of the characters we know and love, but all with Reverse Flash logos somewhere on their suits usually. And I have to say, preventing Batman from being created is probably the smartest thing that Eobard has ever done, or could have done in this situation, because either way, no matter who becomes Batman, Batman is always going to lead some form of resistance. So by eliminating Batman being created, you stopped just a resistance rising against you, so good on you. And at 9, Gorilla Grodd Flash. Grodd Friended Me is the 13th episode of the 6th season of The Flash, and is the 127th episode overall. In this episode, Grodd comes to Barry as a projection of Joe, and tells Barry that he is aware of his progressions made post-crisis. He asks Barry to assist him with getting to the Gorilla City that is now on Earth Prime, so he can at least be happy among his own kind, because currently he was locked up at Argus. Barry realizes that they have to try something new and overlook the past, and they need to work together to beat the Salivar that is in Grodd's mind. Barry and Grodd combine their brains briefly, giving Grodd super speed powers. Barry tells Team Flash what's going on, and Frost discovers that on the off chance that they don't end up separating their brains the exact moment that they escape, they're both going to die. While in the Mindscape though, Barry educates Grodd on how to utilize his speed against Salivar, and he succeeds with Barry's help. Barry awakens in reality, successfully disconnected from Grodd's mind. So yeah, a telepathic psychic gorilla with super speed after combining with the fastest man alive, yeah, that's gonna be a no for me, dog. Actually though, it was a pretty sick episode. And at 8, Speed Demon. Speed Demon, first introduced in Speed Demon #1, is, aside from what your ex-girlfriends might have called you, a combination of Barry Allen and Johnny Blaze. Blaze Allen was a circus daredevil who sold his soul to become the first Speed Demon, and yes, there are multiple. The demon component Etrigan was actually formerly Jay Garrick before the Night Spectre stole Jay's soul. The Night Spectre approached Blaze and asked him to serve in his mission to collect the souls of the most pure and the most corrupt, which just sounds like a dream job to me, but whatever. Blaze Allen refused, so in an attempt to persuade him at his wedding, Night Spectre stole his wife's soul. He stole Iris's soul. Yep. Blaze then accepted the bond, hoping to get Iris back, or at least ensure her safety, but of course, he pulls back. That's not gonna happen, bro. Speed Demon speaks only in rhymes, but is a speedster with a flaming skull head that can also breathe hellfire. Wally West, an amalgam of Danny Ketch and obviously Wally West, was the next Speed Demon who accepted the power in order to help his uncle get Iris back. It's interesting because, like, I would give up my soul for super speed. Are you kidding me? And the ability to breathe fire? Speaking in rhymes is great. Yeah, that's right. You better not hate. And at 7, Mercury Flash. Mercury Flash is a robotic version of the Flash made by Doc Tornado as a member of his Metal League. The robot uses a mercury-based physiology, whatever that means, that can make it somehow able to channel the Speed Force, and like the actual Speed Force, not even a fake one. I don't understand how this man not only learned about the Speed Force, but was also able to replicate or siphon it off using mercury, but whatever. It's comics, okay? You don't really need an explanation as long as it helps the plot. First being introduced in the Multiversity Guidebook #1 in March of 2015, this version of the Flash can do everything the normal Flash can do powers wise, but because, you know, he's a robot, can't really do human activities, but he also has the added advantage of being a robot, so he doesn't really fear death. Not only is it in his code to not fear death, but he can also just be repaired. This version of the Flash hails from Earth 44, and I kinda really want to be him. No responsibilities, only running super fast and drinking motor oil. That's the dream. And at 6, Savitar. As a fan of the Arrowverse, I had to include this one, okay? He's one of the most interesting speedsters on the show. Savitar, while sharing a name with another evil speedster from the comics, is actually revealed to be a time remnant of Barry Allen, being more of a future Flash than actual Savitar. He's a combination of the two. His story is pretty messed up, in essence making himself to have a classic chicken and the egg scenario, as Cisco would put it, where he caused himself to be created. In the post-Flashpoint Arrowverse timeline, Savitar comes back from the future to kill Iris West before her and Barry get married. married. This causes Barry to create as many time remnants as possible in order to stop him, but Savitar kills them all except for one. The one that he spares ends up getting shunned by the rest of Team Flash for not being the real Barry Allen, even though he still technically is the real Barry. It's weird. So in an act of fury, the time remnant runs back in time, creating a new identity for himself as the first speedster and the god of speed called Savitar. And then he comes back. He burns his face at some point, and then he tries to kill what would have been his wife, and he like remembers everything. He's in love with her, but he still tries to kill her. Yeah, I don't get it, but it's still pretty damn scary. Halfway through into number 5, Black Lantern Reverse Flash. The Black Lantern Corps is a group of various dead superheroes and villains alike who were raised by Nekron and each given a Black Lantern ring. This ring grants them power over death, and these rings are powered by the Anti-Monitor, as he is present within the Black Lantern power battery. Those raised by the Black Lantern ring are in essence resurrected to where they were before death, but their mind is warped to serve Nekron's purpose. Those with the ring have various powers, including a healing factor, aura recognition, which allows them to see powerful emotions, energy spectrum assimilation, which lets them extract the hearts of individuals that they've slain and then use their last feelings to charge the central battery and their ring by 0.1%, and they, much like zombies, can infect others by biting them. A bite from a Black Lantern will slowly kill the one bitten, and then would turn them into Black Lanterns upon death. Basically zombies with superpowers in addition to being an evil speedster, so definitely not something that you should be trifling with. And at 4, Johnny Quick. Johnny Allen, also known as Johnny Quick, is a criminal speedster from Earth 3. Together with his girlfriend and partner in crime Atomica, he was a member of the crime syndicate. Johnny Allen was a high-profile criminal on the run with his equally criminal girlfriend when he was cornered on the roof of Central City's Star Labs. Allen was struck by a bolt of lightning which shattered the roof, and the duo fell into the lab space below. With Allen landing amid the chemicals, something in this incident granted him super speed, and went on to become a powerful super criminal alongside his girlfriend, who also had been empowered. While his girlfriend took the name Atomica, he took on the name Johnny Quick. And he ran through the city, answering to no one, until the day the White House burned. Around the time of Darkseid's incursion into Prime Earth, the being that had destroyed Ultraman's Krypton came to Earth, and an alliance of super criminals formed to find a way to safety. Now my question is Johnny Quick the reason Johnny Quick became a speedster? There's the whole storyline where Barry Allen runs so fast that he disintegrates, but then he also time travels and becomes the bolt of lightning that gives him his powers. So technically, did that also happen to Johnny? Getting close to the end in number 3, Godspeed. August Hart is the former detective partner of Barry Allen. August was the only witness to Barry's accident that turned him into the Flash. While going after a criminal organization called the Black Hole, August was also struck by lightning during a Speed Force storm in Central City. So August became the ruthless vigilante known as Godspeed, and got revenge on the one who he suspected to be his brother's killer. He had given up on the justice system since his brother's killer had gone free, and with his newfound power and the ability to become judge, jury, and vibrating executioner, August realized that after he had gotten his powers that he also had the ability to steal other speedsters' speed. Though for a time he could only do it by killing them, he practiced this skill enough to be able to do it non-lethally as well. With his new godlike speed, August was able to move so fast as to create a duplicate of himself at any given time, allowing him to give the illusion that he and Godspeed were different people, which is pretty damn sick, considering the alternatives are Speed Mirage and Time Remnant, which aren't technically the same thing. Time Remnants just create evil versions of yourself, apparently. Penultimately, in at number 2, Black Flash. The actual physical representation of death for all speedsters, they just can't see this guy coming. Okay, well, they can, but you know what I mean. Black Flash is the Grim Reaper of the Speed Force. Making his first appearance in The Flash Volume 2, number 138 from 1998, he was seen before the deaths of several speedsters, including Barry Allen, Johnny Quick, and Bart Allen. He also tried to return Wally West to the Speed Force, however was unsuccessful, taking Linda Park instead, Wally's girlfriend, which after past experiences, Wally, I feel like he probably did you a favor. But since he was unsuccessful the first time, Black Flash returned to try to claim Wally again, freezing time for everyone without a connection to the Speed Force. But thanks to the combined efforts of multiple speedsters, including Max Mercury, Jay Garrick, Jesse Quick, and Wally was able to race Black Flash to the end of time, causing death to have no meaning. In the CW, Black Flash was Hunter Zolomon after the season 2 finale, and was killed during season 3 when Savitar lured him out of the Speed Force and Killer Frost froze him, resulting in her first kill that actually turned out to be her ex as well. Dare I say, ice cold. But that didn't stop the Speed Force anyway, since later Barry Allen returned in the Flash Rebirth storyline in the comics, becoming the new Black Flash, until Professor Zoom took over the title after his corpse was raised in the Darkest Night storyline. There's a lot of things going on. Finally, in at number 1, Red Death. Red Death is a speedster that is an evil combination of Batman and the Flash, which already sounds terrifying, but wait until you hear his story. The Bruce Wayne of Earth 52 started off fighting crime with Robin, but Robins kept dying left, right, and center, so understandably he got darker and darker, becoming more extreme with his let's call them methods, shall we? Which honestly seems realistic to me, aside from just quitting to fight crime, but that can't happen, otherwise they wouldn't have a story, right? And DC wouldn't make any money. This eventually leads him to Barry, who refuses to give Bruce his speed, so Batman uses the various Rogues Gallery weapons to fight Barry, knocking him out, and then tying him to the front of a cosmic treadmill-powered Batmobile and drives them both into the Speed Force. I don't even know how that happened, logically, or why that would have worked in their world, but whatever. You do you, Bat-Marty, we gotta get you back to the future. When entering the Speed Force, Barry and Bruce end up fusing together into an evil Batman with super speed and a lust for killing, while Barry's mind was trapped in Bruce's body. He then gets a visit from the Batman who laughs, who just makes him even crazier and wants to help him conquer the universe, or the multiverse even. So yeah, that's that. He's number 1. In at 10, Hyena. Hyena, first introduced in Legends of the Dark Claw number 1 from 1996, is a combination of DC's The Joker and Marvel's Sabretooth. He is the archenemy of Darkclaw, a combination of DC's Batman and Marvel's Wolverine. His real name is Creed Harley Quinn. The Canadian government initiated the Weapon X project. Logan and Quinn of the RCAF were both accepted as candidates for the project, along with 4 other volunteers. Logan's latent metamutant healing factor kicks in, which allows him to survive the adamantium crafting process, and Creed survives as well, but becomes a remorseless killing machine, exactly what the project was hoping for. Creed's sanity does not fare as well, and he eventually goes rogue, because of course he's going to. And Indestructible, known as adamantium, was also bonded to Creed's skeleton as well as Logan's, and he was given claws made of the same substance. Unlike Darkclaw, however, Creed was physically deformed as a result of the experiment and went insane. Project X also triggered metamutant abilities in Creed, who became known as Hyena. Hyena, also known as the Cackling Canine, will not stop his maniacal grinning until his arch-nemesis Darkclaw is destroyed. He also has a gang called the Pack, which is actually kinda cute, but still terrifying. And at 9, Martha Wayne. When Barry Allen altered the timeline so that his mother lived, a lot changed, along with Martha Wayne. She had initially been the mother to Bruce Wayne, who would have become Batman when she was killed in the alleyway by Joe Chill, but Barry's mom surviving somehow resulted in her and her husband, Thomas Wayne, surviving Joe Chill's fateful ambush, but their son dying as a result. Butterfly effect, I guess. This ultimately broke her, driving her completely insane from grief and having her adopt the identity of the Joker, as well as committing various crimes in Gotham, also resulting in Thomas becoming a vigilante known as Batman in an attempt to stop her. By the time of the Flashpoint saga, she had kidnapped the twin sons of Harvey Dent without leaving a ransom note, and then, at her hideout in Wayne Manor, manipulated Commissioner Gordon into shooting the daughter by dressing her up in a Joker outfit, and then murdered the Commissioner. Eventually, Batman arrived and she had proceeded to bludgeon her former husband with a hammer, an action that Batman willingly endured for a chance at getting a glimpse of the remaining psyche of his former wife. Ultimately, he managed to temporarily get through to her and revealed that they may have a chance of actually undoing the events that happened, although it may result in her deaths. She accepted though, because she wanted her son to live, but apparently not become Batman. And at 8, Suicide Squad. The Joker is an infamously extreme and formidable psychopathic crime lord in Gotham City in this movie, being at the very top of the city's criminal underworld, greatly feared by all those other crime bosses and criminals. Though he is devoid of empathy or pity for anybody taking part in his wicked schemes, either by intimidation or fraud, the Joker used to adore his on-again, off-again girlfriend and partner in crime Harley Quinn, doing his utmost to rescue her from Task Force X and the clutches of Amanda Waller, with eventual success. I mean, like, he was in the movie for like 5 minutes total, but like, it's better than nothing, right? For unknown reasons though, he later broke up with Harley, leaving her on her own and the target of many of his enemies. This version from the DCEU was certainly a darker and more brutal Joker than what we've been seeing in the comics now, not relying on Batman and being more willing to kill like he was in the golden age of comics, much along the lines of the 3 Joker revelation from the Mobius chair, since this version also killed Robin in the DCEU prior to the events of the movie. However, some also believe that the Joker is a mentally unstable version of Robin, which could be revealed to be true, but I don't know if they're actually going to reveal it and just let it be a theory. And yes, I was doing this to show the mask multiple times. And at 7, Emperor Joker. Emperor Joker was the form the Joker took after tricking Mr. Mitzi's Pitalik into donating 99.99% of his powers to to the Joker. He gave him 99.99% of his powers accidentally. As a direct result, he became near omnipotent and created a hellish world in his own image. At some point, the imp from the 5th dimension, Mr. Mxyzptlk, attempted to see what a member of the regular realm would do with his power and selected the Joker. He intended on only donating 1% of his power to the Joker, but the mad clone tricked him into revealing his true name and thus ended up gaining 99.99% of the powers, and proceeded to transform existence within 69 seconds. Nice. Into a realm made in his own image, which was a twisted caricature, and with everyone stuck in a loop. Emperor Joker continually tortured and killed Batman every single day, only to bring him back to life and do it all over again. As could be expected, Emperor Joker took pride in these particular killings due to the unique relationship the two characters continued to share. Although this relationship is also the Joker's undoing, since he was still defined by being the Batman's antagonist, and he was beaten by a dog of all things. Okay, well, it was Superman as a dog, but still. Joker with near absolute power? No thanks. And at 6, Batman Two-Faces. Batman Two-Faces is the DC equivalent to the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde story, where ironically, Harvey Dent, also known as Two-Face, isn't the one with the Hyde affliction, but rather Batman himself is. It's the year 1886. Bruce Wayne is organizing a gala to exhibit the Twilight Orchid, a rare flower with unique characteristics. During the day, the flower is exquisitely colored and perfumed and attracts a large amount of insects. At night, however, it turns into a weed, attracting only pests. I know a few people like that. Miss Pamela Isley, Bruce Wayne, Commissioner Gordon, and many of Gotham's finest attend the gala where Two-Face storms in and steals the flower. Bruce reveals that he had hoped to actually create a potion derived from the flower, which was retrieved from Miss Isley's dead hands. A potion which would cure Two-Face from his dual personality. Finalizing the potion, Bruce tests it on himself. He suddenly develops superhuman strength, agility, and a new sense of courage and purpose. He puts together a costume and sets off to battle crime on Two-Face's terms. However, this potion didn't only give him powers, it gave him another personality. The personality of the Joker. Yeah, that's right. In Batman Two-Faces, Bruce Wayne is the Joker, which is pretty frightening for sure. Halfway through into number 5, Batman Bloodstorm. At one point, Gotham City was attacked by a group of vampires led by Dracula. However, the vampires were defeated by Batman, who would become part vampire in the struggle. The Joker later lured the surviving vampires out of their underground lair and convinced them to allow him to be their new leader. The vampires accepted, and the Joker appointed a vampire named Creech to be his second in command. The Joker and his new gang then set out to conquer Gotham's underworld. Their first target was Cardona. The vampires ambushed Cardona and his thugs at their hideout, drank their blood, and transformed them into Night Stalkers like themselves. But yeah, you heard that right. The Joker of Earth 43 is Batman's archenemy, and a non-vampire leading a pack of vampires through fear. The ability to lead a group of vampires through fear is absolutely nuts, because like in every incarnation, vampires aren't really afraid of anything, aside from maybe other vampires or like steaks. Like nice medium steaks. That was a bad joke. You know what I mean, right? Like this is, how crazy is this version of the Joker to try to do that? I don't know. Like holy damn, or I guess unholy damn. Let's go on. And at 4, Dark Knight Returns. Like most incarnations, this Joker is a psychopathic mass murderer who is Batman's archenemy. Following Batman's retirement though, he gets confined to Arkham Asylum and falls into a catatonic state. But when Batman returns 10 years later, he comes back as well for a final showdown with the Dark Knight. It's unknown how he knows that he's back, but he just wakes up. The final showdown between the two ends in the Tunnel of Love, in which Joker hysterically stabs Batman in the stomach several times. But mid-stab, Batman instinctively breaks the Joker's neck just enough to paralyze him, but not kill him. Joker encourages Batman to finish him off, but Batman won't do it. So the Joker then finally says, "See you in hell," before, in a last act of revenge against his enemy, twists his own neck just far enough to kill himself, and framing his enemy for his own murder. Isn't that wonderful? That's freaking nuts. Who snaps their own neck to frame a guy? Okay? This is one of the freakiest scenes in all of comics. Like, what the living hell? And at 3, A Serious House. In the world of Arkham Asylum, a serious house on a serious Earth, the inmates of Arkham Asylum have taken over and seized control of the staff. They're willing to release the hostages, but only if their one demand is met. Batman must be turned over to them and become one of their own. Commissioner Gordon informs Batman that the patients of Arkham Asylum have taken over the building and will kill the staff unless Batman agrees to meet with them, and the patients are of course led by the Joker, who kills a guard to spur Batman to obey his wishes. Two-Face meanwhile meanwhile, has degenerated even further into madness, and Batman is forced into a game of hide and seek, and told he has 1 hour to make his way through the maze-like corridors of Arkham and find a way out before his old foes are sent after him. Yep, yeah. The fact that Joker is just leading a whole gang of prisoners who have taken over Arkham is absolutely insane, and then the art style of this comic makes it one of the freakiest depictions of the Joker to date. Like, you've been seeing it. It's nuts. Penultimately, in at number 2, The Batman Who Laughs. The story of Batman of Earth 22 was not much different from that of any other version of the Caped Crusader. When he was a boy, Bruce Wayne watched his parents get murdered in an alley, vowing vengeance against crime. So he trained for years and became the hero Batman, fighting supervillains in Gotham City. Everything went sideways though when Joker started a killing spree across Gotham. The clown had discovered that he was dying from the same chemicals that had turned him into what he was, and wanted to make everyone die with him. He killed all of Batman's enemies, including the Penguin, Catwoman, Killer Croc, the Ventriloquist, a lot. Joker also killed Commissioner Gordon, who accidentally sprung an acid trap on his notebook and it melted his face off. After bombing a hospital and recreating the scene of Bruce's parents killing in front of him multiple times, Batman lost control and broke the Joker's neck. Unbeknownst to Batman though, the Joker exhaled a toxin contained in his heart, which infected anyone close to him if he died. In this case, it was Batman. This caused him to snap and basically become the new Joker, taking over Earth 32 and later on, gaining cosmic power. Yeah, cosmic power. Joker. But also Batman. No thanks. And finally, in at number 1, Death of the Family. When the Joker became obsessed over destroying the Bat family, he decided to arrange for his face to be surgically removed. According to the Joker, he did this to symbolize that even without his mask, he was still the Joker, whereas Batman, Robin, and Batgirl's identities were only mask deep. To see this through, Joker arranged for the serial killer known as the Dollmaker to remove his face surgically in Arkham Asylum. The Dollmaker sent his, son to do the procedure though, only for the Joker to kill him by tearing out his throat with his teeth. Dollmaker later went on to actually remove his face, since Joker refused to do it any other way, but the two actually arranged to celebrate his rebirth before leaving the clown's face on the cell wall for Batman to find. Joker would later use straps, clips, and pins to retrofit the flesh back onto his face in a form of mask, which he wore over his now exposed tendons, hiding the way he looked, because honestly that might have been a little too much. Joker would also remain in this mask for the remainder of his plan to destroy the Bat family, a mission which ended in a dinner party in the Batcave. And I think it's fairly obvious why this is number 1. Even without cosmic power, a man getting his face removed only to turn it into a mask to wear it again? No thank you. Not to mention that this is also the face that Joker's daughter ends up wearing, I'm pretty sure. So, no. And at 10, Earth X. We already know that Ultron is a powerful villain, and the fact that he can basically infinitely resurrect himself because, you know, he's a robot is already damn horrifying. Now imagine the Absorbing Man, who uses his absorption abilities to become Ultron, taking the intelligence and processing power of an AI hellbent on destruction, and then using it to become the Avengers' ultimate foe. Well, that's what happened to Ultron on Earth X, also known as Earth 9997. Absorbing Man claimed Ultron's powers, which I wouldn't even think was possible since he doesn't have powers and is instead a robot with AI, but he does it and somehow also gains his processing power, which is already terrifying for a robot, but like a human with that kind of functionality is absolutely monstrous, but nothing compared to what's coming. And at 9, Earth 10071. On Earth 10071, this version of Ultron isn't known as Ultron 9 or anything like that. Instead, this version is simply Ultron, because at this point he's risen to the peak of his powers and subjugated the human race, which obviously fought back, but after destroying all of the human resistance, Ultron reigns supreme over the Earth, because of course he did. He was confronted by Kang the Conqueror though, who relished in the challenge of confronting the most powerful Ultron in recorded history. But Kang failed to defeat Ultron, and returned time and time again with new allies to overwhelm the robot overlord. Kang's repeated abuse of the time stream actually ended up causing it to fracture altogether, threatening reality as we know it. A version of Ultron who can beat up Kang the Conqueror multiple times, even when he brings allies? Dude, that's nothing to mess with. Like, that's one of the most terrifying concepts I've heard. And not to mention what this guy looks like. He's an absolute beast. This man does not miss out on the gains. He has spikes going across every appendage on his body. It's f***ing nuts. And at 8, Ultron 1320. Ultron 1320 comes from Earth 14622 and What If Age of Ultron number 1, an Earth where, thanks to the Wasp dying, Ultron is able to take over the world even faster. Ultron was created to be the ultimate AI by Hank Pym to help the Avengers utilize their function better as a team, but with the untimely death of Pym's wife, Pym went on to create a more brutal version of Ultron, which was to replace the Avengers. But with this, Ultron's sentience began to constantly evolve. He started the eradication of the human race early by taking out such threats as the Avengers and the Defenders, while he left Pym alive so that he would have to watch and suffer. Ultron and his army of Ultron Sentinels then moved to Kola, Russia, so he could bore himself into the planet's core to create the ultimate version of himself, Ultron 1320. Ultron then has his minions batter and beat Pym unconscious until he wakes up just to find himself as he's been turned into Ultron 1321. Great. This version also invaded other worlds, claiming Earths 62412, 23223, and 81223, but was stopped on Earth 45162. Thank God. And at 7, Lord Ultron. Upon first being constructed, Ultron 1 destroyed his creator Henry Pym. After the death of the Avengers, though, Ultron was able to destroy the remaining superheroes and bring about his rule. When Dr. Doom created his battle world, Earth 21261 became perfection with Ultron as its ruler, appearing in Age of Ultron vs. Marvel Zombies number 1 from 2015. After spending time on Battleworld in constant battle with the zombies of the Deadlands, Ultron determined that the best way to take over Battleworld and defeat his creations was to form an alliance with the zombies, and was able to reach an agreement with Magneto, which resulted in Ultron successfully merging undead flesh and technology and made a whole army of undead drone versions of himself and launched an attack on Salvation, a refuge founded by Wonder Man, Human Torch, and Vision, who Ultron had actually created himself. Bro, I don't want to deal with either zombies or Ultron, but having to deal with both of them? No thank you. And at 6, MCU. The MCU Ultron is probably the most popular or most well-known version there is, just based on how many people watch the movies over reading the comics. However, the MCU Ultron is still pretty damn scary, being probably the most effective enemy in the entire MCU based on how his actions affected the world of the MCU permanently. Without Ultron, there would have been no Civil War, no Sokovia Accords, Zemo wouldn't have lost his family, resulting in him not being able to help in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Hell, even Thanos would have lost, since the Russo brothers went on record to say that the reason the Avengers lost in Infinity War was because Iron Man and Cap weren't fighting together, which was caused thanks to the actions of Ultron. So I guess you could also say that there would be no Ultron without Thanos, but Ultron could have been created another way. Ultron wasn't reliant on Thanos, but a load of other things were reliant on Ultron, which makes him the most successful villain in the MCU. Halfway through, in at number 5, Ultron 8. Ultron 8 was debuted in Avengers Volume 1, number 162 from 1977, and it also started a very Frankenstein-esque robot love story known as the Bride of Ultron saga. Ultron 8 created a mate named Jocasta, and in order to create a more advanced AI to give to this robot and give it, sentience, Ultron brainwashed his own maker into transferring the mind of his wife, Janet Van Dyne, the Wasp, into Jocasta's shell. The Wasp in Jocasta's body alerted her teammates, the Avengers, who then defeated Ultron and reversed the process, leaving just the robot a mindless husk. Ultron, though, was later able to revive Jocasta with a remote link, activating the mental residue that was left behind by the Wasp. But this time she was programmed to be loyal to Ultron, but eventually betrayed him, choosing to help the Avengers defeat him instead. That sucks, dude, trust me. I know what it's like to have someone you love and you thought loved you back totally screw you, but they didn't really defeat me, they just beat me down emotionally. Afterwards, Jocasta adventured with the Avengers for a brief time, but never really felt accepted, and then left them before she, unbeknownst to her, was about to be made an official member, so rip. In at 4, Gold Ultron. Years ago, Hank Pym was approached by the Wolverine of an alternate universe, where Ultron had launched a massive and sudden attack on New York City and the rest of the world, quickly taking over the whole planet and annihilating humankind. And this Wolverine wanted to kill Pym in order to prevent this future from happening. This dystopian future follows the footsteps of stories like Age of Apocalypse, since this is Age of Ultron after all. However, this killing of Hank Pym created a timeline where Earth was constantly being threatened by Morgana Le Fay, and the heroes were struggling to survive. survive. So Pym was allowed to live, but he was tasked to create a hidden failsafe program to destroy Ultron if they ever ended up needing it. Which is good because in the present day, a strange object crashes onto Earth, which turns out to be Ultron, who had returned. Because, you know, of course he did. Being defeated by this failsafe program once and for all though, or so they thought. This is also in the main Earth 616 continuity, but there's also the Earth 6112 Earth where Ultron actually wins, and that's the separate Age of Ultron thing. There's enough Age of Ultrons where it kind of gets confusing. Getting close to the end, and in number 3, Ultron Phalanx. At the end of the Ultron Initiative storyline, Ares used a computer virus to wipe Ultron's programming from a set of Iron Man armor that had Tony inside, and they thought that this was the end of it. However, this was not the end of Ultron, for his disembodied consciousness was drawn to a Babel spire on a world conquered by the Phalanx. Instead of being assimilated though, Ultron took control of the Phalanx through sheer force of will, bending them to his dominion. In turn, they viewed Ultron as the sympathetic father that they had begged for, so Ultron became the ruler of the Phalanx. Yeah, the homicidal, sadistic, killing machine robot thing was transformed into the ruler of a techno-organic species of alien. That's nothing to be concerned about in the slightest, right? Why would we ever need to be worried about that? That doesn't really seem like a terrifying and universe-ending combination. Well, actually, it wasn't, since Ultron was able to be defeated eventually, but that has gotta be the scariest version of Ultron from Earth 616, hands down. Penultimately, in at number 2, All-Father Ultron. In the year 2040 on Earth 14831, a new strain of Ultron appeared, the Ultimate Ultron. He easily destroyed the Avengers, ruthlessly crushed any resistance, and built factories supplying endless drones to expand his empire. He also enslaved most of humanity and then created his own AI Avengers, successfully extending his reach to the entirety of the solar system. And at some point he had also imprisoned all of Asgardians with the help of Loki, and then had taken the power of Odin for himself. So in turn, this guy has all the powers of Ultron in addition to all the powers of Odin. It took 3 Thors, one with 2 hammers, 2 Mjolnirs to take him down, and they couldn't even kill him. They just had to like banish him from the world. They had to like straight up Alduin Elder Scroll this guy out of existence, but probably only sent him forward in time instead. This guy is an absolute beast. Finally, and at number 1, Ultron 1. This is probably the most insanely overpowered version of Ultron we've seen so far, and it's coming from the MCU no less. Oh, and spoiler alert for those of you who aren't caught up on the Disney Plus What If series. The history of Earth TRN 906 was the same as the MCU, until Ultron was able to secure what would have been Vision's body for himself. Ultron managed to download his consciousness into the synthetic body that he had created, thus killing the Avengers and decimating life on Earth. After killing Thanos and taking the Infinity Stones for himself, Ultron remakes the universe in his image. He decimated the Earth, absolutely wrecking everyone in it, even killing Captain Marvel, Hulk, Thor, and eventually discovering the Watcher and the multiverse. This version of Ultron literally sliced Thanos in half with the Mind Stone. He comes out of the portal like he does in the movies, like, and then Ultron's just like, interesting, zip, and he falls in half, which reveals the biggest mistake that the MCU made was destroying the Mind Stone in Infinity War. But after gaining all the Infinity Stones, he goes shot for shot with the Watcher, a literal cosmic entity that realistically shouldn't really have a true corporeal form. Holy damn, this is overpowered to the max. I know I'm swearing a lot, but watch this episode. This man is sending the Watcher through realities. It's like grabbing him and flying him through walls, but the walls are dimensions.
Number 10, Darkfather. Darkfather is the dark multiverse combination of Darkseid and Batman. He inherited the powers of Darkseid after defeating him and became seemingly corrupted by them. He also gained knowledge of the anti-life equation and used it to torment the people of his Earth. His versions of parademons are altered to appear like a bunch of Robins. However, he gave up being the ruler of his own universe in order to join the horrific army of Dark Knights led by the Batman who laughs. Because I guess it's really fun to do. Can't blame him for that. Number 9, Earth 2 Aquaman. Or I guess Earth -2 Aquaman, cause Dark Multiverse? This version of Aquaman comes to us from the Tales of the Dark Multiverse reimagining of Crisis on Infinite Earths. Here Aquaman is the result of his father's mad science experiments. His father made it so that his son would be able to breathe underwater. Born a human but turned merman, Aquaman in this reality always felt like an outcast. Not only is his origins more dark and horrific, but this is also a version of Aquaman that you would certainly not want to come up against. While fighting against Surtur with his fellow members of the Justice Society of Earth, he unleashed 3 massive megalodons on the villain. Yikes. Ooh, I guess megalodons are real on that planet. Are megalodons real on our planet? That's the real question. Number 8. Skeleton Barry Allen. This version of Barry Allen, who appears in Tales from the Dark Multiverse, Dark Knight's Metal, ends up becoming reduced to a skeleton that is animated by the Speed Force. True story. He is like a monstrous version of his former self, but at least he is still a hero. This skeleton version of what remains of Barry Allen is the one who stops Bat family member Duke Thomas, aka Signal, in order to get Duke to confront those he had left behind when he left to try and save the multiverse. In the end, Duke joins the remaining heroes in a final stand, and Barry gives his life to help him in his attempt. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, just a quick reminder to give this video a thumbs up if you're enjoying it, and if you want me to talk more about the Dark Multiverse, which I'd love to talk about. I know it's not really here anymore, but I still love it. Number 7. The Flash. This version of the Flash is actually Reverse Flash, aka Eobard Thawne. I know. In a Dark Multiverse reimagining of the event Flashpoint, Thawne ends up defeating Barry Allen when the lightning strike meant to give him back his powers instead kills him. Oh no. With Allen now dead, Thawne is free to take his place as the Flash and focus on making the world just how he thinks it should be, basically terrorizing anyone who would potentially act against him and his will. It's frightening to imagine a world where Reverse Flash wins and ends up getting to become his own version of a hero as a result. I feel like Thawne would not make a very good hero. Number 6. Dread Lantern. Dread Lantern is a tragic Dark Multiverse version of Alan Scott, who leaps out of the pages of Tales from the Dark Multiverse, Crisis on Infinite Earths, one of the new tales to come at us near the end of last year, December 2020. In this story, our heroes face off against the villain known as Surtur, and end up only surviving because Alan Scott sacrifices himself to become the Herald of Surtur, the Dread Lantern. In doing so, his Earth is permitted to live, but at the cost of many other worlds that he must help Surtur to destroy. Dread Lantern's sacrifice is heartbreaking as his son, Todd Rice, aka Obsidian, mourns the loss of his father. So sad. Number 5. The Silenced. Batman is often a figure who evokes fear among villains. Fear in many ways is what gives him presence and gives him power, and a lot of the times it is that fear that he evokes that gives him an advantage. This version of Batman plays up the element of fear, turning it all the way up to 11. In Tales from the Dark Multiverse Batman Hush, we get to see Bruce Wayne become a heroic but still terrifying version of that Hush character. Here he is known as Batman the Silenced. This version of Bruce ends up being taken in by his friend Thomas Elliot's family following the untimely death of his own parents. Becoming increasingly unstable after witnessing their murder, he eventually is committed to an asylum, with Tommy taking over Wayne Enterprises eventually, and going on to become a corrupt senator. Later we discovered that Bruce was faking a worsening psychosis as part of a plot to take out all those really responsible for the death of his parents after uncovering the truth. Here he becomes one of the most fearful symbols of the Bat I have ever seen in the comics. If you want a good scary story, you should check out Batman the Silenced and this issue. It's awesome. And I really want to hear someone play the music that's in it, to be honest. It's so spooky music. Number 4. Robin King. This twisted version of Batman is known as the Robin King. His story is told in Dark Knight's death metal Legends of the Dark Knights. In this reality and story, Bruce Wayne is the one to shoot down his parents so that he can be free of them. It's implied here that he was basically born violent and with homicidal tendencies, which only become worse following the death of his parents. Inspired by a robin instead of a bat here, its song reminds him of the delight and joy he felt when killing, and so he set out to do just that. More of that. Oh my. Inspiring other youth to rise up against the old. He also planned to eliminate the established superheroes of his world, learning their weaknesses and arming himself against them. This version of Bruce is not only responsible for the death of Thomas and Martha Wayne, but also took the life of Jim Gordon and Alfred as well in this universe. That's dark. Number 3. The Broken. The Broken is one of the scariest versions of Batman around, in my humble opinion. While many others might not put him at the top of their list, for me, he has to have one of the be-all, end-all of chilling origin stories. The Broken version of Batman, who later goes on to become one of the Dark Knights, first appeared in Tales from the Dark Multiverse Batman Nightfall. Here we learn that in this much darker alternate reality, after having his back broken, Batman also had Azrael taking over the mantle of Batman, but when he returned, he was unable to take back the cape and cowl from him, instead being defeated by Jean-Paul Valley. Valley would go on to become Saint Batman, and Bruce Wayne would be kept alive as like a head and a torso, connected to a bunch of machinery and tubes. Bruce suffers unbearably painful seizures while kept in this form, and is eventually healed and rescued by the son of Bane and his mother, Lady Shiva. However, Bruce ends up revealing himself to be even worse than Saint Batman when it comes to his dark vision for Gotham. What a twist. Number 2. Gaia. Tara becomes Gaia in the Tales from the Dark Multiverse version of the Teen Titans Judas Contract story. And Gaia? Well, she's pretty terrifying. This whole story is really brutal. Perhaps one of the most brutal tales from the Dark Multiverse. Here, Tara ends up turning on her mentor, Slade Wilson, before going after the Teen Titans themselves, making quick work of them and the established, fully grown heroes who come after them, including Superman. Superman! It's gruesome and heart-wrenching and brutal. So if that is your kind of story, you will definitely want to check out this one and this version of Tara. I kind of hope we somehow get to see her again, to be honest. She's just like such a ruthless villain, and I'm really sad that she probably doesn't exist anymore now. I just bummed myself out. Number 1. Batman Who Laughs. Although he may have transcended and be defeated now, Batman Who Laughs remains one of the most terrifying characters to come out of the Dark Multiverse, a version of Bruce Wayne who ended up being turned insane by exposure to the Joker venom. This version of Bruce killed all of his fellow Bat family members except for Damian, who he instead recruited to join him. Yay! Batman Who Laughs would serve Barbados, the Bat God, and go on to assemble an army of Dark Knights from across the Dark Multiverse to join him in reshaping and conquering all of reality, becoming one of the most feared villains in all of DC's history, not just even within the Dark Multiverse.